And now I'm joined by Steve Baker, the new Brexit minister. Steve, welcome. And now you're in the government. Various comments you made in the past have been pulled out and held and asked at you. One of them, which I thought was very interesting, was that you have said you want to destroy the EU. Is that right?
That not actually quite what I said.
Okay.
But it was a speech 7 years ago, which people can find online, courtesy of The Independent. But what I was saying in that speech was that what we needed was free trade, peace, dispersed political power and democracy in Europe. And the point I made was that it was for European electors to decide what they wanted to happen to the European Union. As I said on the Daily Politics yesterday, a lot has changed over the course of 7 years, both for me as an individual and for the European Union. What's happened recently is, of course, that European electors have rejected the sort of aggressive nationalism, which personally I detest.
Yes.
And I'm glad they have rejected it.
Yes.
But that means that what they've chosen is further integration.
Yes.
And that's one of the reasons why we needed to leave. So given that they've chosen to integrate, to fix the problems with the Eurozone, our duty is to work with them constructively so that we leave, they succeed, and that mutually we go on together into prosperity.
So for listeners and for readers of the Telegraph, we want the EU to carry on, don't we? Is that's the position we should be holding, is it?
The position we should be holding is that we want to promote the prosperity of the people in Europe with whom we share common values. I mean, the whole thrust of my speech, not only 7 years ago and today, is that we want peace and prosperity. I mean, of course. Personally, I want to see dispersed political power. I want to see democratic control of that political power. I mean, these are uncontroversial points.
And you run an intergroup called the Cobden Centre, which motto is "Peace will come to Earth when the people have more to do with each other and government less."
Yeah,
it's a classic Conservative position, isn't it?
Well, it's an old English liberal position. So yeah, I consider my personal politics to be old English classical liberal, like Cobden and Bright. I've resigned as a trustee of the Cobden Centre now because I'm a minister.
Yes.
But yeah, I mean, it's social progress through honest money, free trade and peace.
How did you react when you got the phone call from Theresa May? It's not what you were expecting. I mean, or were you? Because at the time you were chairman of the ERG, weren't you?
The European Research Group of Conservative MPs.
Which is about 100 Tory MPs who are kind of pro-Brexit. So you're their kind of shop steward, aren't you?
Well, so for a year since the referendum, my main task has been to help Conservative Eurosceptics support the government's policy. I mean, that's been the joy of the last year. And people have seen that, mostly what I've done for a year is organised to support the government. So it's a very different set of circumstances from the period leading up to the referendum. And I've been proud to do it. But I was given a preparatory phone call to see how I would react, and I was knocked out. It was very surprising. I was very pleased when the Prime Minister called me and asked me to join the government. And my job now is to strain every sinew to make a complete success of our exit from the EU, not only for us, but for our European partners too.
How are you finding it in government then? You got some civil servants in the room here, all very good, professional. Are you happy with the quality of advice you're getting and officials you'll see?
I am absolutely delighted with the quality of the staff we have. The staff, particularly these staff, the staff we have in the department. One of the things I've realised is that the people who've joined the department have done so because they want to have on their CV that they were part of this transformation.
Yes.
They can see the challenges, they can see the need to rise to them. The intellect, the drive, the application, the sheer commitment to making a success of exit for this country is there to be seen, and I'm incredibly proud of the civil servants that we have.
Well, what's your view of the EU? There's lots of sniping about Britain. Just in today's Telegraph, there's a comparison between Britain and the Black Knight from the Monty Python film, who had all his limbs cut off and said it was but a scratch. I wondered if you want to react to that.
Well, it's a most unfortunate exchange. It looks like a speech was made by UKIP MEP Raymond Finch, and then it received Frans Timmermans' rebuke in the way you've just put it. But later on, Mr. Timmermans said that he's a great admirer of British culture.
Yeah.
He said, "I love the UK, whether they are in the EU or not," he said. "I think we are all under an economic, political and above all a moral obligation to do the least harm possible in this Brexit process." So the truth is here, I think that a UKIP MEP made an inflammatory speech and it got an inflammatory response.
Yes.
But overall, Mr. Timmermans made it clear he loves the UK. So it's delighted. I love Germany, I love Europe, he loves the UK. Happy days.
But which Monty Python character would you like in the EU too? The dead parrot?
No, absolutely not. Although it's funny you should say that, because there was once an Economist front page cover which had a parrot with an arrow through it in relation to the EU constitution, possibly the Lisbon Treaty, which said the title was "Just Bury It." So of course we've come a long way since then. But the point is, we are where we are, and our job as citizens of Europe is to make a success the institutions that we have, and that includes us leaving, the EU being free to integrate further, and to do so without us holding them back.
Do you think Brexit is baked in now? It seems to me it is. I mean, for me as a journalist, you might disagree, but all the kind of chaos about government policy on all sorts of areas in the wake of this not winning the election outright. But to me, the thing which seems almost completely protected by law, actually, is Brexit. Is that right, do you think?
I think that we are in a very clear position with the Lancaster House speech
Yes.
and the white paper. It sets out where we ought to go, and it's the right set of strategic choices. So I don't really accept that there's chaos in any degree. I think we've ended up with a few noises off, and that's sort of inevitable. But I think we've got a very clear path before us. Having taken a major strategic decision to leave the European Union, we now need to keep taking major strategic decisions in the right direction. It was our new trade head of profession, Crawford Faulkner, who said, you don't want to take any strategic missteps, you want to keep going. So, for example, being in the EEA would be a great mistake. David Cameron gave all the reasons why during the course of the referendum. Now we find this week people are talking about it.
Yeah.
Can you imagine putting the city into the EEA as a rule taker when there are vested interests against us on the other side? It would be a grave mistake and the wrong thing to do. So what we need to do is deliver that deep and special partnership, a new free trade agreement, security cooperation with a range of institutions in the EU, to come up with a limited implementation period which gets us to that new relationship. Well, it needs, whatever we do, it needs to be done by the general election.
Yeah, so turn on to 2 to 3 years after 19.
Well, what we should be doing is implementing our new arrangements as swiftly as is possible, and I would expect that to be done by the next election.
Good. And EFTA, you'd mentioned after the other model, which some of the Ramonas mentioned is EFTA.
I didn't mention EFTA, I mentioned EEA.
I know,
as you'll know that
the
EEA is slightly smaller than EFTA. Switzerland's in EFTA, but not the EEA. So the point is, we should not be joining the EEA. It's not actually on the table, and it would be a bad deal for the UK.
And what's your view on European Court of Justice settling rows between the two trading blocs? Should we have what's your model?
My model is what's in the white paper. We can't accept the jurisdiction of a foreign, what amounts to a foreign Supreme Court. There's no precedent for it, and it'd be wrong to do so.
Correct.
There will need to be some form of dispute resolution mechanism, but at the moment that is a subject for the negotiation.
Two Supreme Court judges and 2 from there.
Well, at the moment that's a speculative point of view, but it is a matter for negotiation.
Good idea, maybe?
We need some form of dispute mechanism and a resolution mechanism, but it is to be negotiated.
And just to be clear for our listeners, you think we can get out of the single market and the customs union by March 19? And then have a transition period after that?
I think that we can deliver a deep and special partnership based on free trade with Europe, security cooperation, a range of other issues. But I am clear that we need to make sure that we minimise disruption and maximise opportunity. This is about turning outwards to the rest of the world, where even the EU says 90% of growth is going to come from by 2020. I am hopeful and optimistic about our landing zone.
Yes.
The point is to get there with the minimum of disruption.
And is that out of the single market and the customs union?
The destination must be out of the single market and out of the customs union.
Yes.
If you ring up a trade negotiator and say, we want to do a trade deal, but by the way, we can't control our tariffs and we can't control our domestic regulation, then there is no conversation.
Do you think the EU want that as well? Because I think they do. I think they want that clarity as well.
Well, I think that prior to the election, they had clearly understood where we were coming from with what had been said at Lancaster House and in the white paper, and I think they do want that clarity. But this is why I think it's a strategic mistake even to begin discussing the EEA. The UK needs to pivot outwards to the world. We need to make the UK the best place in the world to do business. We've had some of our top judges just talking about one of our best exports, English commercial law. We need to use absolutely every asset we have, make this the best country, bar none, in the world to do business and be pivoted outward.
Do you accept the terms hard and soft Brexit?
No, I absolutely don't. It's pure propaganda, a false dichotomy and a nonsense.
On this podcast, this is the 15th one we're done, we often try and ask people what they think it means, and it seems to mean lots of things, lots of different people all the time.
Well, it's a nonsense designed to confuse the conversation. If you're leaving the European Union, you need to leave the European Union, and we're clear what that means. It means ending the jurisdiction of the European Court of Justice, making our own laws, controlling how we spend our own money, having our own trade policy, and controlling migration.
Exactly.
So you can't do those things within the European Economic Area and the Customs Union. I can see why people who are anxious want to minimise disruption by clinging on to some of these institutions. But it would be a strategic mistake. We need to leave properly, and that means doing the things in the white paper.
Good. Now, well, you're our star guest of the week, and you're called our podcast way of the week, which I haven't prepared you for, but I hope you can answer this question. We ask all of our podcast ways of the week for a single red line they want to see Britain emerge from at the end of the negotiation period. And given you're one of our negotiators or part of the team supporting David Davis, what's your red line you want to emerge from at the end of the Brexit process?
Well, my red line is that we're a more positioned to be a more prosperous country as we go forward through making trade deals with the rest of the world, being a beacon of free trade. But that's, I'm happy to say, in the government's policy.
And you're excited about Brexit, are you? Is there lots of furrowed brows, isn't there, in the media? I mean, Andrea Leadsom said last week, we need more patriotism amongst the press and the TV media. Do you agree with that?
Well, I think we all need to defend our interests as a country, but patriotism's a word which I think sometimes is a difficult word to use. But the United Kingdom has an interest, and that interest, if properly understood, is well aligned with all of our partners and allies around the world. So what we need to do is stand up for ourselves and say that we are a strong and great commercial nation which can look outwards to the world and be a success. But I'm trying to avoid criticising those who often have legitimate concerns, but I believe they're all concerns which we can deal with.
Do you think they're damaging negotiation now, these naysayers at the BBC and other places?
I'm trying to avoid naming any particular organisation, which I may have done in the past, but you know, the British Broadcasting Corporation is the British Broadcasting Corporation. You know, they are not independent global citizens commenting on affairs right across the world. They are our national broadcaster. They're a jewel and they're deeply prized. And I think it's incumbent on all of us to think about what's in the best interests of the people of the United Kingdom and then take the appropriate steps to go forward. I'm
sitting here in the Red Line dining room looking at you and looking at Union Jack over your right shoulder, and it seems very perfect. You're talking about in patriotism in such ways.
Well, Chris, I can assure you, sitting here looking at the beers over your shoulder, it feels a perfect place to be. I just wish it was a bit later in the day so we could have a pint.
And just finally, do you think we'll be out of the EU by 2022?
Yes.
Steve Baker, thank you very much for coming in.
Thank you.